All right. Good morning. And so we will start our session today with refuge and bodhicitta as a way of correcting motivation. And then we'll start with mandala offering, trying to do a few things at the same time. So we'll start with mandala offering as a token for requesting the teachings, and then Geshe will lead the way with refuge and bodhicitta for correcting our motivation. Sashi Bodhi Junshi Meto Chamri Rabi Shi Nidegen Adi Tangye Shindu Mikte Owa Gidro Punanda Shinla Chupa Shoidam Guru Radhamandala Kandiyatayami
Sanji Cholam Soti Chomula Chancho Badu Dami Jasus Dagi Chushi Yeban Zodagi
Dola Penchi Sanji Droga Sho
Sanji
Cholam Soti Cholamla Chancho Badu Dani Jasuchi Dagi Chishi Yeban Zodagi Dola Penchi Sanji
Droga Sho Sanji Cholam Soti Chomula Chancho Badu Dami Jasus Dagi Chushi Yeban Zodagi Rola Bishi Sanji Droga Sho Gangi Tuzeni Zoli Dawa Tamji Bang Padam Jela Changzi Good morning. 먼저 산님아 내 노종님을 썼을 때 쉬고하랬으라.
And so during the Sunday morning teaching, we've been studying a text that is called Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun.
그러다 text한 책이 긴 거를 가르치는 노종 책을 써야 돼. 이게 당연히 이게 넘버 산지를 취 넘버 산지를 땜바 좀 된데 샤점을 댄샤를 더 추줄 텐데야 라고 했어요. 근데 추줄 뒤 뉴트로디 견 콘셉트 연된 콘딩기 산지 공간지 토야 뉴 타투 테레샤 가지스나 견 콘셉트 연된 콘딩 소바이나 안치 순자 타부젤이야 펜디트 같이 락칭기 기우시 교류에서 디고도스 디 타블이야 아니 로종스 대샤스라.
And so we're studying this text, Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun, drawing from teachings and instructions that were taught by the Buddha. So we're looking at a set of Buddhist teachings. And the purpose for doing so is in order to eliminate all faults and develop all positive qualities. This is our objective. This is what we set out to do. And so if we are going to develop all positive qualities and eliminate all faults, we will become powerful people, powerful beings, having the ability to effectively accomplish happiness and benefit, happiness and well-being for the sake of others. And for that end, we train our mind.
어디에다 드네 촉직네 안 삼을로게 대화되고 왔다 동문되고 배웠어 대화되고 동문스들이 칼래야 로좀 대처.
And also, here we're looking at mind training as a method for accomplishing our own welfare. So our own welfare and happiness, and dispelling suffering and pain.
그래서 이 컨텍스트 대화되고 있어요. 아니 주기 대화되고 류 대화도 sem 대화니 이 필요해 봐서 치고해 봐. 이 난게다 즉 sem 대화되고 하고요. 노조 개체슈 같은
And so how do we go about in accomplishing our happiness and well-being? Well, first off, we can distinguish between the physical level and the mental level. So there's physical pleasure or well-being, and there's mental happiness and well-being. Here, when we're looking at this system of mind training, we're training our mind in order to develop mental happiness and well-being.
Look, they were to yours. Naya and a Luke there, Yatcha Yatamba, King on the chair, the Shepherd made a jurors, was Luke the lance of Jelia, and it Luke tell them, and Jagamanchi would do not be, and Maransugi, Luke ranching sort of Chagwelza, and was a tone there. He need 야 참좀 아니 되는 마 굴러야지마도 마냥러야지마도 아니 야 침무참 아니 야 러야지 내가디 먼저 용에 죽어라서 이자 딜티지 까려야 그게 샘그 상황단단지 마시바이나 아니 루센니까 아니 마키비 난 아니 로고에 차려다 샘그 상황단단지 and Geshe Shuchen from it said Dina, he would go there. Seven songs on them, Geshe Shuch Chagio, Sitcheni, and it was on the Sungus.
And so we can look at the physical level. So physically, we might feel comfortable, we might be well, there might be physical pleasure, and we can do quite a few things in order to make the physical level be comfortable, be well, but it's still limited because it doesn't matter how much we try to improve the physical level. From the moment we take a body such as this is to say that from the moment of birth, it is guaranteed that we will go through the suffering of birth, sickness, aging, and death. And we can see that this is the nature of the body, to go through the states of suffering, aging, through the suffering of birth, sickness, aging, and death. And so when we take birth, we start to go through a process of aging. So we grow up and then we age, the body decline. The state of the body deteriorates, and it doesn't matter how much we try to improve it, it will just escalate. So we cannot make it better and better. But what we can do is to take care of our mind. And so without developing a certain way of thinking, when we look at the way in which our body deteriorates, decline, there could be quite a lot of problems and suffering for us. Whereas if we train our mind in developing a certain way of thinking and focus on that, we can make it better and better. And this is the most important thing that we take up in the practice of mind training. And this is the import of this text.
Kinza that same gi lojo cheum bigi that nam gi gom gyati so chigorasra gom gyati so chen gom gyamni and same gi ti kanrach ragores long gom gyawdi bi same desa chigle ya teni deawdi same gi nam to mongu shuch God was same number of Mavina, same because there's assembly a change never and same pillar same revelation give same contents like Lydia. This gas yadam was a race. Being assembly change I'm just a little assembly and drop with the change and it in that shooting machine. Right. And it be Chapter so and in Gaia. Individually, Mamu Songa, dear, number Sanji Vishon and Sil shoots, Sam and Lee, J. Toya. The serious that is on the share the couple of those Maramado. Kanji and Gomja, kitchen books. Chashas.
And so we train our mind, and normally we take mind training to be principally applying our mind to meditation. And so how do we use meditation in order to provide the mind with happiness and well-being? Well, one part of providing a mind with happiness and well-being is to apply the mind to becoming, or using the mind to become more focused, to become single-pointed. And through that, to put a stop to a level of discursiveness. So often the mind is running all over the place, being busy with excessive conceptuality. So then this level of discursiveness is affecting sometimes, even some doctors say, it's affecting sometimes our heart condition, blood flow, and so forth. And so if we can reduce that level of discursiveness and develop more of a single-pointed state of mind, the mind would be able to become more at ease, to dwell more at ease. And therefore, at least to be able to do so, meditation is important.
And that means the love, not trouble you. Not trouble you want to deliver on the two chicks I could now robot. Curry, she lived the chapter of Gala, and it been a hospital. He and the look Tony, he seen trials though. Because those children could remove pay out children. Corona, you taxi mess of yourself. In a Kurumu to such a so gingerly pay, and a remote tin deal as well. Did could taxi the shopping. Just Yatamas, they could show anything, you taxi.
This guy has a friend, visited a friend a couple of times, and his friend is doing some woodwork. He's doing some wood carving, or kind of he's burning some drawing and paintings and patterns on thin pieces of wood. And he told Geshe that a while ago he was diagnosed with blood pressure. But then having developed that tight focus or single-pointed focus in doing this artwork, he said that even without taking medication, his blood pressure came down. And this is due to kind of stopping this course level of discursiveness and making the mind become more focused, more at ease.
And has not do to this be assembly, there's a chili, dead. Change Mambo Mel, Rondo Mambo Mel. Chengiru Deondi, Lulaya, Ranshingi, and in non-suit he was at this rock. He told me, and it trashing young rich. Ink Parzai, and singing party. Then the young girls are in your for which you're the Koran Lord Yadini there. Makotal drink Kunga Lajaka. Geshe la Tsultrim Degona. This is the case that you are chasing or the need code. Geshe la Tsultrim Degona. So Gasa Chick Gogles. Nimata Chick Gasa Legachis. For a remote identity was about. Could say with the using it, Japan doesn't could you show the song of the cousin did gong the cheaper chance. Gong singing the figure same you there. Such in danger. The D they were to down by Sonada, and then you remote teaching, so gas easily, and it's something there, and it's selling we over now. Yeah, remote training, and it's also taxi, mark your joy over. No to there, 밤새 찍어야 바구도 왔으라.
And so one part of our meditation practice is designed to cultivate a mind that can focus on one thing, observe one thing without becoming all over the place with a sense of discursiveness. And if we can develop that form of meditation, not only it will affect the mind, but it can also affect our body. In that if the mind becomes more relaxed, also the body gets some relaxation, or it can become at ease. The body can get some rest. That can happen, definitely. Another person that Geshe knows already passed away, but Geshe had a conversation with him when he was celebrating his 100-year-old birthday. Passed away when he was 102. Anyway, Geshe was having a conversation with him, and Geshe's English is quite limited, so he didn't understand everything that the guy was saying. But Geshe asked him about the secret for long life. And the guy said that you need to have something that you really like doing. And the guy was a painter. He was an artist. He was a painter. He said that if there's something that you really like doing and you put your mind to it, then it feels that for him, that was the key for having a longer life. I guess I thought that there is something about it. If you're doing art, either if you're a painter, if you're doing woodwork and so forth, and you use that in order to make your mind become focused, single-pointed, focus on one thing, and thereby you reduce the level of discursiveness, not allowing the mind to run without control with different thoughts and different discursive conceptions. It can affect the mind, becoming more calm. It also affects the body. Geshe feels that it is not unlikely that if you can do that, then you can reduce your blood pressure or avoid some forms of heart conditions. So doing art in this way, or from a Buddhist perspective, speaking of developing that single pointedness of mind, they're all coming down on the same thing. This is one part of this or one type of meditation that we employ in the Buddhist tradition.
Pena the and Sanji, the Sanji actually and Sanji Kutavichia, and same penny, same Sanji Kujilia, meaning some down Devana, and Che Yashu Gom Chagores, Kazna be Gom in Balia, Ted and Javiton, Sanji Jis Jimmy, Chops I said, you understand? Did the Chagor, need so Chagores draw. I think 그 단지 담보 시야기에 로종기 미리 타투버디 산지 공부토야 산지 꿀주야 산지 꿀주야야 규고원스 규디 속사야디 산지 꾸고미야 소디 꾸고미야디 송요다 배 실상 송요다 꾸고미야 아니 꾸 소야 꾸신야로 소버디디 아니 산지 꾼주베 귤레야 로고스라 대자 산지 꾸질레야 미미 로 산지 정된디 꾸피기 꾸치는 소소게 나 여바이나 아니 디 딤내바이나 소가kan 데들이 뭐 산지 꾸질하고 지지지가 근데 파워런 소소 대사되면 지대 아니 저다 저는 미리 디자차 자다 숲샤님 있어 미리 숨샤와이나 아니 이게 몸바치 되고 이 아니 같이 랑랑가 소바 오늘 이게 신라 특당 렘바소리 미쯤니 검자단치 자기는 소요가 이제 미마저치 미난 갑자기 손에서 샤지는 삼만원이야 이 산지 거다 제네 이 샤파트들이 아니 good someone chen to sian temper and consumption with the one turning assembly as shadow, dead to a jeep, and come with the shower, but deep come so society. Chanta Chavos, that is so, Yao pay or pay a way of study.
And so here we're meditating on a tradition of mind training. And there are different forms of meditation in mind training. One of them is developing a mind that is more focused, but other forms of meditations are meditations in which, for example, we meditate on the philosophical view. But to meditate on the philosophical view, which consists of one of the best meditations that we can have, there's a lot of knowledge that we need to acquire through knowledge, knowledge that we need to acquire through studying, and we need to have spent some time studying and training in order to develop an understanding of the philosophical view. So without really going through those stages, it would be difficult to train our mind, to transform our mind through meditating on the philosophical view. And so without studying, there are other forms of meditations that we can do. Like, for example, for us, as we train in the Buddha Dhamma, we practice the Buddha Dhamma. One form of meditation that we do in order to develop single pointedness of mind is a meditation in which we, for example, visualize a Buddha image and train our mind in holding that image single pointedly. And so when we think about it, at least from the point of view of our Buddhist practice, this is an excellent meditation, a best meditation in which we can not only meditate on the Buddha image, but we can also use that in order to recollect the Buddha. And through that, we accumulate the collections. And so we can practice this form of meditation because our final purpose is to attain the state of Buddhahood, to attain the bodies of Buddha. And in order to do so, we train our mind, for example, in meditating on the Buddha, meditating on a Buddha image or a Buddha body. And therefore, it is a good form of meditation. And in order to take up this meditation, we first of all need to choose an image of the Buddha that is a good image, which means that it has the right proportions, clear details, and so forth. We study that image. If you have an image like that, if you have a statue or painting at home, you can use that. If you don't have that, you can come here, for example, to the Gompa. You can have a look at the Buddha statue here, or whatever image you're going to work with. First of all, you study the details. Then when you sit down to your meditation, rather than gazing on that image, you need to make that, whatever you studied, all the details, you need to make them appear to your mental consciousness. So you sit in meditation, and it's best not to completely close your eyes. If you completely close your eyes, shut your eyes, there's maybe some unclarity, drowsiness, or cloudiness of mind that can occur. So particularly when we look at a form of teachings that explain the way to, or one section of the teachings that explain how to develop shamatha meditation, a meditation on calm abiding, in which we develop a single pointedness of mind, none of them is saying that we need to completely close our eyes, but we need to keep our eyes slightly open, resting or gazing in the direction of the tip of the nose. And so if we then sit into this meditation, having studied the details of the Buddha image, then we try to make them appear to our mind. And the way to enhance some clarity of the details is through scanning the body from the head to the legs. So we sit in meditation, then we recall the Buddha image, and we start scanning it from top to bottom or bottom up. And if we do it again and again in trying to reconstruct in the mind those details, at some point we will enhance the clarity. It will clearly appear to our mind, and this is a good meditation to undertake.
service. As you make Mazama, same day to Vina, me chair the son in new months, new woman. Then the calculator was same day, and it began somewhat the Shucham, which Drovina, and because you do stand, they did the same. Tungo, they did. Tell me, can't you indeed conscious Yasayam tears us? The deep Tavana, and it Genjang to ya, and it's Tim, the Nila song, Malaya. Can't you tell a church mambo shoots the sun on tail song? The mambo, the song is.
If we close our eyes completely at the beginning of our meditation, it might give us this sense of ease at the beginning, but it's not helpful for a long-term continuous meditation. It doesn't help the development of clear appearance of the object that we meditate on. Actually, it can harm a long-term ongoing meditation rather than help it. So if we train ourselves in our meditation to not shut our eyes completely, but to leave them open, Geshe feels that it will not harm a continuous meditation. After all, sometimes you come across someone that is engaged in or engrossed in deep thinking, and quite a few people keep their eyes open when they do that. So it seems that they're just gazing in space and they're deeply involved or focused on internal thinking. So it's good to train ourselves in not completely closing our eyes in meditation. It will then contribute to not being affected by ignorance, by sleep, and also it will contribute to being able to develop clear appearance.
Dinipina, Danga, Tongan Chedeva, the Nate Tonsulaya, Nate Andaba Jedelia, Sangi Kunda Kandashi Shambaina, number Sangi, Pigin Kandashi Shambaina, Chen Zum the Shansha, Chi of Maris. Kusu depend Dawper, Miti Vitemba down, Nambitambani, P. Marchet, Dawper, Nidinani, Miti Vitemba Shawdi. Teach your that, language your that, right? In a that should on a minute, a little rock.
Also, in thinking of the Buddha images and statues that Geshe has come across over the years, none of them is depicted or constructed with the eyes shut. All of them have the eyes opened. The details when you compare Buddhist statues to statues coming from the mainly Indian traditions, there are quite a lot of similarities, obviously coming from the same traditions, but often you find that those in non-Buddhist traditions are depicted or constructed with the eyes closed, whereas in the Buddhist traditions, the Buddha eyes are always opened.
Tony Dunjibal, John Shujanga. Tony Dunjibal is then you move Gunzinji. Nibati Tiban Papa, Eugene, you move Netan, Duki, Gunzinji, Songa, Ton. Share from Deta, you call given you Jones.
And so, having said that, we'll now go back to the text and pick up from the point that we left off in the previous session. And so, we are currently looking at the instructions for training in the ultimate mind of enlightenment. And in order to train in the ultimate mind of enlightenment, which is a perceptual realization of emptiness, we first off need to train in understanding what emptiness is. And for that end, we're looking at the last section of the text. And so the last thing that we've covered in the previous section was going through the verse of Nagarjuna from 70 stanzas on emptiness, which says, actions are caused by disturbing emotions. Karmic formations have a disturbed nature, and the body is caused by karmic action. So all three are empty of their own entity.
루트지 gyula soba ani jinganso kham nesagi ani jigding kham digi ani nesulo soba sam logic yunguyores ro derita number sanjivi tadu tadu tinjichi thone ani cheba cheni ani muye nesu khani bati tapi ani tomba se da rawang de chibi tomba ro yo de quién tiene yo que chashi le tiene yo que tiene tabla so tinjichi matobe yu khorang ge rangu ne chubachi ani mebadi da ani som zamas cheba chi di ne lu de tong di da teni shi ni da ani mimu singi de chashi ran so ani shi temuti seni ani jin da mimu ma drupsuchi ani mimu sepal temi ani mimu ongi ani kevalenso kola kosu dumanyu su rumbati da doksuji tindiji sungwa da di chamu shujiresra lobjon kana kazu majina ma hoya kala kapore dasra
Says here at the end of this section, train yourself until you have clearly ascertained this process of cyclic existence. And so when we analyze the philosophical view in order to attain the state of enlightenment, the state of Buddha, we train ourselves in understanding the philosophical view of emptiness. And here we're, for example, analyzing the body, mainly things such as our body. So what is the nature of the body? In what way is it established? What are the causes and conditions contributing to this body? What are the different states of rebirth, the states of existence in this worldly realm that we can have such a body? So we train our mind in investigating those issues, and then we go deeper into the analysis of the philosophical view that is taught in the Buddhist tradition. The philosophical view is the view of emptiness, emptiness of independent existence. So we take a particular phenomenon, a phenomenon in question, and we analyze the way that it exists, whether it exists independently, or if it's empty of independent existence. And in our analysis and investigation of phenomena, we go through different levels of dependency in order to understand the dependent nature, such as they depend upon causes and conditions, dependency upon parts, how they are imputed in depends upon particular things. So we perform such analysis based on what we find in teachings in order to develop an insight into reality. So when we then understand reality, how things exist, we understand how anger, attachment, and ignorance operate, how they come to be. But also we can use that in order to eliminate anger, attachment, and ignorance. So then when they're exhausted, when they're eliminated, we can thereby overcome death under the sway of karma and afflictive states of mind. So these are those topics or points are quite complex, and without first off spending some time studying that, it's quite hard to understand the whole scope of the development of the philosophical view of emptiness.
그러니까 간지 아니 유비 란신지 유비 란신 바시기 바지 송거레스 벤 넘버 산지 비기 쇼노야 직den기 감됐다 비 바이나 아니 직 아니 토마다 타마메디 아니 가뜨기는야 아니 차근지 정치 양직 양수주 양직도 신다 용대와지 송거라서라 아니 때 셴바다야 그 문제 제단 가시기 아니 토미기 따지 제법지 쇠샤세야 소바 양 비기 아니 지 말기 친구지 토르니 차사세야 소바 때들이 마음부 연구하ras 또 상로야 제와 제원디기 아니 rota chivachi chive lamne ta seju chivaina ani ngone khandas choyi me tanyi gogores ro.
And when we investigate the nature of phenomena from a Buddhist perspective, the Buddhist tradition solely speaks of the nature of change, transformation. For example, looking at this worldly realm, it is constantly going through a process of change, and it is without beginning and without end. So that without beginning and without end, we go repeatedly through a process of creation and disintegration, creation and destruction. So we can then look into the nature of this worldly realm. If it is going through the process of change, some philosophical views or some religious traditions assert that this world, this changing phenomenon, was created by an entity that had the power to create. Some, from a scientific point of view, a very popular theory is the theory of the Big Bang. Then the Buddhist presentation is of a world that is without beginning and without end. So there's quite a lot for us to think of, to analyze, and to investigate, and to reach our own conclusion.
Yulia Tangiti, Maripati, Yul P. Nguamebo, Yul Koran thing is and it tune data was or Dilichi Sunga. That deep Pombalaya, and it you look in Tony Pangos. You look the Gurazi generations, Gulatin and Guandresu, Galatin and Gurela Sova. Kanji give it on the that D and that thing on the shim juicia. This was whichever chini, then give it on the Tomaina, and then give me what that thing loteria, no chini, T monkey chadanki, and chadan less out than everybody, get a yatamata, Doctor Chingo is brought.
And so in the Buddhist tradition, we said that the root of our suffering is the three poisonous afflictions: anger, attachment, and ignorance. And the basis for them is ignorance. So ignorance has a certain observation of its object. It takes its object to be an unchanging phenomenon. This is how ignorance observes its object. It is unchanging. It exists completely onto itself. It exists objectively in the object of itself. This is how ignorance perceives its object. And so in order to eliminate that form of ignorance that is adhering to its object as if it exists in an unchanging way, in and of itself, in an objective way, in order to eliminate that type of ignorance, we develop an understanding of the way that this object exists. So for example, rather than holding it to be unchanging, we come to see its nature of change, how it is changing because it depends upon causes. It is changing because it depends upon conditions. So if we train our mind in seeing those levels of reality, we can thereby undermine this mind that is objectifying the existence of a particular thing, taking them to be, for example, unchanging. And if we can undermine ignorance that is adhering to its object as unchanging, as is existing objectively in and of itself, if we can harm ignorance, we will also come to harm anger and attachment. We can reduce the levels of anger, attachment, and ignorance and come to eliminate them. And if we eliminate anger, attachment, and ignorance, we'll also then eliminate their influence over the actions that we take and thereby also be able to rid ourselves of karma.
Kanji and in Nanzu so dependera and then turn the trubachi, resida, Latuamata, Mancheta, Jam Lina, then another the trubachi, the two Maris Lavan, Yatama dress, the Laura, the Inaya, you never causes me, the Euro, from Mother Mimachella, is a children, cannot come to this. Cannot put the go to this, vacation, Harman, with someone, one church, this someone was not. The country, but do still a jealousy on the and it's so much saw me, and it's also took away your way. They looked at the and it looked choke your body. And the silver and it's someone else love color, and it's someone else. Someone saw me, nothing in the choke over the someone else love me, and in Lenya, Pecalica was. Inaya, searching the yard. So many two goya doji, Sam Chigla, that Yungu yours, right? The Yungu yourself.
And then we also investigate the nature of ourselves, the way that we exist. So we exist depends upon other things. But then if we not suffice with studying that in general, we study, we train our mind in a more refined way of understanding these levels of dependency. We can train in saying that, for example, I'm established depends upon others. We can learn how to say that with great confidence, but of course, the degree of confidence that we will have in terms of perceiving ourselves as being dependent phenomenon might differ between all of us. So we might be able to say the words, but in terms of developing certainty that indeed this is the way that we exist, well, we have to check it for ourselves. But still, when we then look at the methods, the procedures that we use in order to understand such levels of dependency, along the way, for example, we can ask some questions. Like, for example, if we ask someone, are you your head? Are you your hand? No, who are you in actuality? Are you the hand? Is me or you? No, are we the hand? Are we the hand? So of course, most people say that, no, I'm not the hand. I'm not my head. Most people, Geshe would say that I am just all of them. No, I'm not a particular one of them, but the person that I am is all of them. So thinking about it like that, or answering it like that, would be when you haven't trained to a great degree in analyzing the way that we exist, the way that we're established. So many people might say that I'm not a particular part of my body, a specific part of my body, I'm all of it. From a Buddhist perspective, we don't express it like that. We don't say that I'm all of the parts of my body or the summation of the parts of my body. It's more of I exist depends upon the parts of my body, all the parts of my body. Which means that when we think of the different parts of the body, we maintain that there is a certain collection here. There's a collection of different parts or multiple parts, and I exist or I'm established depends upon this collection. I'm not the collection, but I exist independent on that collection.
Sama res labana, dodo the rate of Dr. Dodo the my body and Nyola Jarvana. Nyola Jarvana Shingados, Kazna, want to check Susula, can't do such tabana. On the magic bed, as Susu Samaya, to production drag me, and the cases here, Nambutea, or to Shabana, and it ink cup to sort of Zilia, and in Madishik Nasatayan or Chagdosra. Think Kalia, and in Luke Hansa Nasatang. Tangomer, the young Tada. She showed Madeva Chandi, and ink cup to sort of Zilia, and Nasatayan, shook chairs. Zubu Kanzalaya, Nasataya Diomata. Then Chiza Na Maki Bachawi, Zubu Kansa Madiva Machava, Ink Kapu Tojilia, Madiva Chapa, Karari, Jodam, handle yourself.
And so in investigating who we are in actuality, how do we exist in actuality? Geshe is here just expressing the way that he thinks about it from different perspectives. So we often think of ourselves as being kind of this thing that is put together into one mass that consists of the different parts of our body. So if we are someone, or if Geshe is going to ask you, what is the I or me in actuality? Is it your hand or head? You would say, no, it's not the particular parts of my body. It is all of them together. This lump of thing, this collection that is put together, this is who I am. But still, if we then take that and start to examine that, like, for example, what happens when someone insults you, speaks to you in a really rough way, or the body language is quite offensive? You might feel hurt. And often when we feel hurt, the hurt that we feel is kind of in our chest, in our heart. So if I'm kind of all of the body, why is it that we feel pain only in our heart and not in all of the body when we're being insulted or being hurt? We can think of that in terms of a personal experience, how it feels to hurt, to be offended. Also, the chest contracts. There is a pain here in the chest. The pain is not in all of the body, but it's here. It's quite interesting when you think about it.
And so in Kabul, young little Tommy little and it some down to Wayna, and it been in Kabul, Masayong, they quite negach, do with negach channels, Tommy Trasa, Yala by Kapsa, and it's up by Kapsa, Tommy Zawadi, and in Katulia, and Chavilas, Kanjinamation, Dintison, the Dinti Tony. And in Katunita, and so leati. Mato these Susu in Bikinsingi, and in Nasajan Tangi over their remotes, that do some tani, and it's Susu Piri, do to such a unique tolia. Only some of Tang Tuaina, and in Maki Bayoya, mission another chicken some, and it Mati Bayoya, so of Mambu Shuji, Yasa Yata, Tigi, Susu, and it Zutu such. And that Nambishon Yasu, Zutu such your Matsuda. Dean Zutu such never jiglia, Lodge Chotuana, and it none of something, not Remasu something, not of that, Maki Bigot, Yasayata Yon progress.
And so when someone is saying something hurtful to us and we feel pain in our heart or the chest contracts, there's a certain sensation of pain. So there is a sensation, but I'm not a sensation. I'm not a sensation of pain. So why is it that we experience pain in our heart or the chest contracts? Well, when we look at that, at least from the point of view of Buddhist explanation, it is said that when our body is being formed, it begins, let's say, with forming of the heart area or certain nervous system, and then the limbs and the other parts of the body develop. So they develop, you can say, from a center, the body elongates, different limbs develop, different organs develop, and therefore, at least Geshe feels that when you look at it from a Buddhist perspective, maybe you can say that we feel this pain in our heart because kind of the heart is where this body in this life developed. So it is not that I am my heart or I'm located here at the heart, but when we try to find or to identify who we are in actuality, we can point it the real I, when we look for it within the body, we're not going to be able to find something that we can point at, right? So the I, me, is not here in my chest or in my heart, and we cannot find anything that we can point at in other parts of the body. And so we do go through different sensations and experiences in our interactions with others. We might feel pain, hurt, a sense of discomfort, and so forth. And then when we investigate that strong sense of self that arises in our mind in those situations or scenarios, we'll come to see that there is no point in the body that we can point at to identify the real I or me. So if we train our mind in such investigations, we can reduce our reactivity to certain situations. So we become quite reactive. We become hurt and in pain and angry and so forth when a certain thing arises. But when we train our mind in seeing that we cannot really identify this strong sense of self, in that we cannot really point where it is in the body.
And then this one is a country and in a something not created that and you didn't that several that long to country doctors you have so that Lodi and Lodi and Truvalis. Tata Maris, because you didn't hear your ones. Made the Dinji Lodi one and Kashimia, Chapaki, Kashimia, Tamaki, and the D with Tony, Chapangi on the Sulu, and Luna with Chavachi with the lesser straw. The D in Chava Deletani, and in Jago, and there was the Duman the soul, the Dinji, and you name so the Inguan, the lake Rotandi, New attending lake Rotandi, Chava, the deep overlayer, picking low lower, the 7 lower. Doctor Giovanni Zindi, Lord the Pango, Lord never so good. That this way, and you think me dancing nothing, you think me never, then you never, round the never. You can't have so much later, then true you about Tinchita, Dami with Tawati. Tenju, Taw Delay and Bembo is even take on the Dami with Tawa, then a Bembush said Delta.
We become reactive when a certain situation arises. We think that person has done such and such to me. And the sense of self that appears to our mind in those situations is if there is a concrete, solid sense of self, as if it exists completely objectively in and of itself. So this solid and concrete sense of self is a mistake. In that, if we try to find it within our makeup, body and mind, there's nothing that we can find to be that solid, concrete sense of self. But still, we believe that appearance that dawns to our mind as if there is a concrete self, concrete me that is here. And because of that, anger and attachment arise. We perform actions in dependence upon anger and attachment. We accumulate karma. And this accumulation of karma is giving rise to pleasure or pain that we experience, to happiness and suffering. We take birth, we take a body in samsara because of such actions, which means that all these manifold types of suffering arise, beginning with the process of trusting or believing that mistaken sense of self, objective self. And so in order to eliminate that process, to put a stop to it, we need to put a stop to the grasping that solid and concrete sense of self. And to do so, we have to then investigate whether that solid and concrete self exists. Can it be found? Is there something that we can point to in identifying that this is that solid and concrete self, as if the same type of self that dawns to our mind? And so when we look further and we cannot find it, we also go through a process by which we see that we as persons, we depend upon cause and conditions, we depend upon parts. There's a certain process of imputation that is imputing ourself independence upon other parts. So we go through this process in order to understand that this objective, concrete, solid sense of self does not exist. And so this is what the section that we are covering at the moment in mind training like the rays of the sun is explaining. So going back to the text. It begins with the need to determine selflessness.
That may be without any questions. Then maybe two colors long. Maripa the Seba Kumala. He you can't mean cheddar so you never repeat then happy. Turn combat chapel, Pango de Dani Chimbo, Chiki Chape. The you soon never the bone the money. Share source.
So the need to determine selflessness begins with the way to eliminate ignorance completely is as follows. We have to eliminate it by familiarizing ourselves with the absence, established through reasoning, of the object of its mode of apprehension in relation to whatever object it focuses on. The great being Dharmakirti said in his commentary on Dignaga's Compendium of Valid Cognition, without discarding this object, one is unable to eliminate it.
These are that Jiggy Niluxanam, that Tolia, Chevachi, and it was Sibu, and it Namchi Chimbu, and a lot of Chimbu, La Soba. The Google is right. These are Namasanji, Chu, Namolia, Kichi, Sheriff Resident, Namji, Bati, Nanga the delay, that 2 years, Nanga the delay 2 years.
What page is it in our text? 119. All right, thank you. And so here, this section of the text says that in order to investigate our sense of self, we are using clear reasoning, not only clear rational process, clear reasoning, but we also need to become determined to do so. But we also need to have the courage in our heart to look into the identification of the self. And therefore, this section highlights one of the most important parts of the Buddha Dharma, which is the development of wisdom.
Then Mahimba, the Lord draw, should do some combatants. Yemi Nimiso, Kanduya Michobi, Motoba, some combatant. Gaji Chishar, Riki Chevachibi, Jesu Gomasi, Rishi Nibitan, Shen, Kanduya, Mozon Motobi, Motoba, some combatant, Combachitan, Singan, Danzing is having woman, only one missing it. This Tambon the Gashi Dal, Lo Shumba Meja, Dancing in Zindangi, Lo Shot Mien, Zimba Mitu Bichete, Damen, Lo Mash Bicher. Can I'm Jenny, Chanso on the Gamish Shimmy, but Sajim Shisos.
And so the text says, instead of doing that, if we, 1, merely familiarize ourselves with collecting and stabilizing our thoughts, or 2, we acquaint ourselves with a non-conceptual state in which thoughts about whether things are existent or non-existent, whether they are or are not, no longer arise. So such thoughts in a non-conceptual state do no longer arise. Or if in meditation, following analysis of this general appearance of what is negated, our analytical understanding differs from the meaning intended, or we meditate merely on a non-conceptual state in which we do not recognize emptiness. However long we prolong the meditation, we will never be able to rid ourselves of the seed of the misconception of self. And so with regards to the first, even though the mind is not involved with the self to be negated, the first is merely familiarizing ourselves with collecting or stabilizing our thoughts. So even though the mind is not involved with the self to be negated, it does not actually apprehend the opposite of the way the misconception of self apprehends, because it is not involved with selflessness. Again, the commentary to Dignaga's Companion of Valid Cognition also states, since love and so forth do not directly counter ignorance, they cannot eliminate that grave fault. And so our goal is to understand that there's no objective existence. There's no independent existence. So when we understand that something does not exist independently, it's not that we negate its existence altogether. The only thing that we negate is independent existence. We do not negate existence in general. So in order to negate independent existence, what we need to do is to understand that the particular thing in question is not independent, but it depends upon certain things. It is dependent. It is not independent. So to understand that the particular thing in question depends on others, we then develop our understanding of it arising in dependence on others, which means the philosophical view of dependent origination. So through the philosophical view of dependent origination, we can directly contradict something existing dependently. And so to merely become inattentive, which means not to take anything as an object of mind and to make the mind rest in that state in which it does not attend itself to anything, is not an understanding of something existing in dependence upon others, and therefore it cannot really eliminate the grasping at things as if they exist independently. And this is what the text is saying. So in terms of determining the way that, in order to determine selflessness, don't leave your state in which don't leave your mind in a state in which it doesn't attend to anything. Simply emptying your mind of thoughts or not attending it to anything else is not an understanding of things as lacking independent existence.
Somebody rishiki shen to ten of gombits, intelligent company, Jemmy to give city, Kusa shen to ten, Kusa shen to Chabashano. Then she can't get to oversee the song, sitting in la, Queens and Dandy, Toson, never goes. Shen good, never greedy. Gentleman, command la, Jepon Shebadan, J shall go there.
So the section began with pointing out a few mistaken approaches with our meditation on selflessness. So instead of meditating on selflessness, we merely familiarize ourselves with collecting and stabilizing our thoughts. So that's not a meditation on selflessness. Then the second mistaken approach is acquainting ourselves with a non-conceptual state in which thoughts about whether things are existent or non-existent, whether they are or not, no such thoughts longer arise. This is also a mistaken approach. So the text says, with respect to that, the second mistaken approach is to confuse any and all the objects of any kind of conceptuality, apprehending existence, non-existence, and so forth, which the object apprehended by the conception of true existence, that is to say, true existence, in which is the object of negation, is established by reasoning that determines selflessness. This is like rekindling the system of the Chinese Hanbot Hashang, for the object of negation is too extensive. So that was negating the second mistaken mode of meditation. Now, the third one says, if in meditation following analysis of the general appearance of what is negated, our analytical understanding differs from the meaning intended, or we meditate merely on a non-conceptual state in which we do not recognize emptiness, however long we prolong the meditation, we will never be able to rid ourselves of the seed of the misconception of self. And so, to address the third mistaken approach, the text says, it is to establish something other than the view of selflessness through analytical awareness, so that when we meditate, our meditation is misplaced. Since it is unrelated to the right view, it is like being shown the racetrack, yet running the opposite direction. Moreover, since clinging onto any specific objective base is the basis for what is apprehended, we must discern the factor that counteracts the manner in which we apprehend it. To do otherwise is like trying to catch a thief by avoiding following his tracks, or like making an appeasement offering at the western door to spirits who has fled through the eastern door. And so next, the text explains the way to determine the view of selflessness. This includes the order for establishing the two selflessnesses and the actual techniques for establishing the view of selflessness. So we first begin with the order for establishing the two selflessness. Firstly, as explained above, although there is not the slightest difference in subtlety regarding the self which does not exist in phenomena, whether the basis is person or the mental and physical aggregates, because of a difference in subtlety in the basis of negation, there is a difference of ease in ascertaining the view. That's all. And so here we are looking at the way to determine the view of selflessness. So there are two bases that we use for determining selflessness. There are I, which means me, and what is mine. I and what belongs to me. So there is I or me, and this is my body. That person is my friend. The other person is my enemy. And therefore we have I and mind as a basis for determining selflessness. So we can determine selflessness in relation to ourselves. This is me or I. This is my body, and this is my mind. These are my body and mind are called aggregates. And those are the bases that are used here for determining selflessness, I and the aggregates.
Okay, these are the said it. You didn't matter what they are consulted. Not said it. You didn't matter what they are. And the Kazakh was in Tombos long, we should hope Tombo needs same than me. Did any dark key that Geshe was the mother. That wouldn't matter. Did and you didn't matter what they are. And it should down was this one got is wrong.
And so looking at the terminology that we use for the basis that are used for determining selflessness, when we determine that there is no objective existence in relation to a self, which means that I do not exist objectively, we're determining the selflessness of persons. Right? So in relation to ourselves, we're determining the selflessness of persons. Then this is my body, this is my mind. These are what we call the aggregates. So the aggregates are attributes of the self that are not the self. In relation to my body and mind, we determine the selflessness of phenomena.
미 통서 비다 고서를 때 용수조보다야 자초거라 자초 직관에서 대한시를 받으시면 뒤바네 다 진짜와 된다와 심장 통지시 심장 통지 진짜와 된다 추군시 삼직관에서 네디 삼직관에서
대한국 받으시면 되다 친구.
대한시를 받으시면 뒤바네.
Okay. And so when we understand that in relation to ourselves, which means understand selflessness in relation to ourselves, and we also understand it in relation to our aggregates, our body and mind, we can then easily apply to everything else, to whatever we hear, to whatever we see. All other things can be, this view of selflessness can apply to in a similar fashion. And this is what the text says. So it says this like this: in order for a person such as Devadatta to appear as an object to our minds, we have to depend on apprehending his aggregates, or his imputed existence can be established through reason. Thus, there's not the slightest difference in subtlety with regards to what is negated in establishing the selfness of phenomena, such as an image reflected in a mirror, a vase, or a piece of cloth. However, because it is easier for some basis of negation to appear to our mind, such as our own persons compared to other phenomena, it is correspondingly easier or more difficult to ascertain selflessness. Also, the condensed perfection of wisdom sutra says, just as you understand selflessness in yourself, understand it similarly in all sentient beings. Just as you understand selflessness in all sentient beings, understand it similarly in all phenomena. And therefore, we understand it in relation to ourselves, we understand it with respect to the aggregates, and that can be easily applied to everything else. Shall we leave the text here for today? All right. And so we'll finish up with making some dedications, dedicating all the virtues that we've collected together in thinking of this topic and listening to the teachings. So we will read a dedication in English. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that is not arisen arise and grow, and may that which is arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. O powerful Chinrazi Tenzin Gyatso, please remain till samsara ends. Savior of the snowland teachings and transmigratory beings who makes extremely clear the path that is unification of emptiness and compassion. The lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Finally, you uphold the seduous moral way, steps in the bountiful bear of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading my Jinna's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long.